At like 85%. So
I can't work with this 85%. I need you on point.
yeah,
I
no,
need you 100% all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. All right, folks. Well, welcome back. Today's December 31st, 2017. I wanted to bring you along for kind of a little bit of an exercise that Julie and I have kind of begun to build into a habit, kind of a practice in our life, kind of this time of year. And really, we're trying to always get better at whatever we're doing. Maybe it's physical fitness. Obviously, kind of one of the focal points of this YouTube channel is our journey towards financial independence, but it's a critical part of our life, but it's not everything. And so we try to build in kind of ways in order for us to improve in all these different areas of our life. And one of those ways is kind of an exercise. Usually it begins kind of early part of December, kind of give us enough time towards the end of the year to really kind of look back and look forward. And we just wanted to kind of shoot a video here to let you know exactly kind of what our process is, kind of how we look back and sort of grade, if you will, 2017, and kind of what we're looking ahead, at least in the first part of 2018. So um, that's just one of the ways that we do. We kind of spend a few weeks to kind of really examine things in the year past so we can kind of figure out, what went well so we can celebrate those things. Sometimes I get kind of caught up into accomplishment mode and I always want to get to the next rung on the ladder, but don't really spend enough time in appreciation mode. And so kind of really looking back at the successes helps at least a little bit with that. So um, maybe we'll just jump in. What else am I missing?
Sounds about right.
Okay. So the tool that we kind of use is something called a retrospective. And I've first heard about it in the software industry, but maybe it's the practices in a lot of different, companies or things. But we use it in our family, and it's very simple. But it kind of helps you get the feedback loops, kind of certain cycles to understand kind of again what's working, what's not working. So essentially, what that looks like is you just kind of spend some time asking three questions. Really, it's what went well, what didn't, and then what can you do to improve. And it can be over whatever time period you want. Like, when this exercise that we undertake in December of every year, and it's been a few years now, we're really looking back at the entire year. I mean, that's like a really long time horizon, and maybe we'll tighten that up to a shorter, you know, reduced time cadence because we're in December 2017. Like, what went well and what didn't in February of this year. It's hard to really, unless you're writing it all down, which I'm not that disciplined to do. So, anyways, we can be whatever time period you want. We're looking at for the whole year. What went well, what didn't, and what can we do to get better? And on the what we can do to get better, we have kind of a framework that we're using to kind of capture some of our go forward goals. So we have some notes here in different formats. And so we'll just kick off kind of looking back at 2017, what went well. So maybe we'll just go ahead and jump in kind of with the first question or the first section, which is what went well. So the first one that we wrote down, kind of no surprise here, we decided to become financially independent within 5 years. Um, do you remember like what was like when we started that? What was it like? Like I don't even, part of me remembers the sequence kind of leading up to it, but it's kind of like one of those things where probably this kind of decision is like it's a really big tree and all these little experiences you have throughout your life are one axe swing against that tree. And you don't really remember the first swing or the 50th swing, but it's somewhere along the way you finally hit it and that kind of tree tumbles over. And so early part of this year, March or April time, was really when we said, yeah, we are going to do this. Um, And actually, the time horizon has accelerated as we've gotten into this and started learning a lot more. We kind of went like kind of head first into all this. Started out with a longer time horizon, but kind of where we're at least right now, it's kind of, 5 and 5. And so, do you remember kind of the early spring time period? Like what was going through your mind when we decided we decided to do it, or when I started talking about it?
Well, I remember it started with you sending me a link to a website of a family that's doing this, and they have a blog, and they've posted a bunch of different articles about what they're doing, how they've accomplished their goals, and I didn't really understand all that it might entail, but once Gary started digging into it more, it was really intriguing because it just started kind of unpacking different areas of finances that we really had never looked at before. And we just started considering, how can we reduce our expenses? And initially, I thought, really, we probably can. I feel like we're doing the best that we probably can right now. But when we started digging into it, we started realizing we reduced our cable bill. We reduced our cell phone bill, not by a ton, but $10, $20, but it does add up month over month. And then we started looking into other areas. Gary and I, for the first time, I feel like we really came together on our finances. It was kind of felt a little separate there for a while, where I kind of was paying the bills, and we really didn't, we kind of had a loose budget, but it wasn't super specific, and not everything was completely transparent. So we started using different tools, different apps to try to figure out where all of our money was going every month, what were we actually spending, what was the real situation. And some of that was actually a little bit difficult for me
Hmm.
in a lot of ways
Mm-hmm.
because, I'm the one that generally spends the most money. I'm the one that goes grocery shopping, I buy the clothes, I pay all the bills. And so I had kind of an idea of what we spent, but I never really was looking at dollar per dollar and adding it all up at the end of the month to see what we actually were spending. And anyway, some areas were surprising, how much we were spending on food. And this one particular blog that we were looking at, the amount that they spent on food, it was like a giant eye opener for me because I
Yeah.
realized, wow, I spend a lot more on food than this particular couple. Of course, I feel like, are in an extreme category of they've really dialed this into a T. And it's an area that I do want to focus on, and we'll talk about that later in another objective coming into the next year, to just try to reduce that bill, because I don't even think people realize how much you can spend on food, and that's a big part of the budget. When it came to monthly expenses, lowering our mortgage, you can't really do much about that, but our utilities, that's something that we looked into. And I can't remember what other areas we explored,
Yeah.
but
I mean, we'll probably, that's kind of the whole focus of the channel, is to document all the different things that, we've learned
mm-hmm,
so far, and the things that we're learning now and will learn in the future. But I think, like, kind of in this section of the retrospective, what went well, I think it was like aligning as a couple, and of course, as a family, that, we're going to do this.
mm-hmm,
And a lot of times, like, the confidence can come from, learning things and researching things, and we certainly, do that quite a bit. But a lot of it just comes from commitment,
mm-hmm.
and so that's kind of what we decided to do this year. So, more details on that, in the specifics coming soon. The next one we have here is we moved to Colorado, and we have a whole video on that, which we're gonna unpack the reasons we moved to Colorado, and more videos in the future. That video that's up there just captures a little bit of the reason why we did it. But as it relates to financial independence, I think for me personally, it was really important to do this. We had been talking about it for years, not necessarily Colorado, but moving closer to the mountains, having more of an active lifestyle, being in the outdoors. And it was really important to me because I think you can get into this trap if you start to talk about financial independence and you're going to get on this crazy accelerated timeline. You could get into kind of a bunker mentality. You hunker down, and you count every penny and every tenth of a penny, and you don't spend, and you don't have a. We didn't want to do that. And as Julie alluded to earlier, we have some objectives coming up when we're like, kind of, what can we do better looking forward? And there's two sides of our goal on financial independence. It's reaching it in 5 years, but it's also increasing our quality of life as we achieve that goal. And that was a big part of moving to Colorado for me. And again, like I said, there's a lot of reasons that, hopefully in future videos, we'll kind of bring you in on some of those reasons that are really important to us. But it was at the same time, right around the same time, where we're making this decision to retire early, reach financial independence super early, that we said, no, we're not going to wait until we're like kind of quote unquote old man retirement to live the life we've been talking about living, right? We want to do it. We want to do it now. We don't want to have the deferred life, so to speak. So in my opinion, like that was a big what went well in this year. Anything else, or do you want to go on to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that's definitely something that went well, is that we finally, after years of talking about making a move, we found an opportunity that opened up and we took it. And it was a big jump for us. It was a big leap. You took a lot, but I think it was, in the end, it was definitely a very good move for us. It was really positive.
Yeah.
Overall.
Cool. So I want to bring you in on a couple of numbers. The third part here of what went well is some specifics related to our finances. And just being real transparent here, right now we don't feel like super comfortable like sharing exactly dollar for dollar of everything, net worth and things like that. I know other folks do, and no problem there. We might do that in the future, but right now I just kind of want to talk about percentages. That's kind of where we're at. When we talk about reaching financial independence, our current thinking, it revolves around three goals. One is having a house fully paid off. That's been a long-standing goal of Julie and I's for early in our marriage. We call that a base. And the reason we call it a base, we want to have it paid off, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to live in that house forever. We might turn it into a long-term rental while we travel, live in another country, whatever the case may be, but it's our base. So that's really one area of finances. The second is traditional, what we call old man retirement. The things that are going to kick in your 60s. So there's goals around that as well. And the third one, of course, is the true early retirement accounts. And we call that our freedom fund. And that's going to be what you're going to be living on of your investment income and the interest that you're getting from those accounts in order to cover all your expenses whenever you hit that early retirement age. Again, for us, it's in 5 years. For someone else, it could be a different age, but really those three buckets. So percentages, percentages for each person might be different, but it's amazing what you can do when you measure. Like Julie said, like at a certain point, we didn't really know what was coming in, going out, but what gets measured gets managed. And if you decide to manage it, you commit to it, it's amazing what kind of progress you can make. So just letting you in those kind of three buckets here. In this date, in 2016, exactly 1 year ago, the percentage that we had achieved towards the base, again, that house that we have, and we have a specific amount that we're targeting, was 8.8%. So we were 8.8% towards that goal of having that house paid off. 1 year later, we're 40.8% towards that goal. So we've gone up, 32% or so. We talk about old man money. This date 1 year ago, we were 2.3% towards our goal. We have specific dollar amounts that we're aiming to hit in the old man retirement accounts. We were 2.3%. Today, we are 31.6% towards that goal. The Freedom Fund, the early retirement, 1 year ago, we were 7% towards that goal. And as of today, we are 19.4% towards that goal. There's a lot of things. I'm not saying that we can replicate everything that happened in 2017. That's definitely not the case. Stock market's doing really well. There's other factors in there, but just wanted to give you a little highlight. We feel like that went really well in 2017. Again, money's not everything. We're not overly focused on it in some kind of way, but just what gets measured gets managed. We started measuring it deliberately, and it got managed in a positive direction. We'll go quickly through the rest of the what went wells, then get on to what didn't, and then round it out with what we're going to try to do better in 2018. Do you want to take
Yeah.
this one here.
So another thing that we thought really went well, and me personally, because it was a pretty big stress point for me when we first moved to Colorado, was getting Autumn, our daughter, into a school that we really liked, and most importantly, that she really liked and was happy with. And it took some time, but eventually we got her into a great program. She loves it. She loves her teachers. She loves her class, and overall, it's been a really positive experience for her. So that was something that I felt like really went well overall. Do we do the next one, or do you want to do that one?
Yeah, go for it.
So also in our move, we are meeting with a group of Christians, and in our meeting with them, our participation in the church involvement overall has increased dramatically from what it was from where we were. You know, we were meeting with a church group, but here we started participating a whole lot more, and a number of factors could have contributed to that, but it is a smaller community here, so it was just a little bit easier to jump in and be a part of the different activities that were going on, and that's been an overall really positive for us this year.
Yeah, just something important to us, and so we track it, and it went well. Rounding out what went well, actually had a recent video where I highlighted this a little bit, but we accumulated about 285,000 frequent flyer points. That's something, again, we're at the beginning stages where Julie really got into it earlier this year, around the same time, to really trying to learn about it. I was kind of pessimistic and sort of like kind of cynical, to be honest with you, but when you get into it and you kind of learn a little bit more about it, which we've started to, it really is a key unlock for us. Travel is something that is important to us, but at the same time, you know, you can't spend the amount of money you need to for a family of four plane tickets, for whatever the case. So we're that went well, but we have an objective even coming on pretty soon to get more of that, so we can still, again, maintain quality of life, but not spending money like crazy. So what didn't go well, just highlighting a few things. This isn't all inclusive, but the first one is that my commute is long and it's a stress to the family. So when we moved here, a big reason that we came here, or at least one of the reasons that allowed us to be here, is that I can work remotely at least a few days a week. But a couple of those days I actually have to go into the office, and that commute is really long. It's helpful in a sense that I get to take a bus that has Wi-Fi and I can work on it, so I don't have to drive. But those days that I'm going in, and door to door is like 12 hours. So if I work long, you know, Julie works long. She's a full-time mom, so exceedingly full-time job, and so it's a stress on the family for some of those days. You want to take number 2 here?
Yeah, number 2 is all overall, we did not do a great job in maintaining our physical fitness levels. I mean, it was kind of one of these roller coaster things where, you know, we do okay, but things would come in, and it just wasn't something that was a great habit for us last year that we want to try to improve on for the following year.
Yeah. Number 3 here, it's similar to number 1, is that my work, I felt in some cases, or some parts of my work, were just too stressful, and required too much of my focus. And that statement requires probably a lot of unpacking, because like, if you're going to work, you want to do the best you can, give your employer, you know, or if you're self-employed, you know, give it 100% and give your best. But it's one puzzle piece to life, and that's how we look at it. And there was definitely times in 2017 where that puzzle piece, you know, started growing and growing. It became more prominent part of the overall, you know, back of the puzzle box, or of the puzzle, than we'd like it to be. So I'm just keeping an eye on that going into this next year, because kind of stress levels and things like that are entirely within my control. They're not, you know, it's not my employer's fault or anything like that. I control that. And so, but it's just kind of recognizing that, that if it affects me, it affects the family, and we don't want it to be.
Yeah. So another thing that didn't go all that great is we had kind of some goals in terms of education at the house with the kids, and different things that we wanted to work with them on. And that's more in my domain. And I feel like that just didn't happen that much in terms of my energy level and ability to really focus on that. That didn't happen as much as I would have liked it to. They learn throughout the day, and they're with me, and it's more organic learning, but we didn't have a lot of focused learning throughout the year that we'd like to focus more on next year. You know, that when they get into school, they do learn, but I think there's things at home that you just have to reinforce. So that's something we're going to try to focus on next year.
Yeah, I mean, education with the kids, I think it could be like multiple series of videos worth of content in terms of like how we think about it and the
Yeah.
discussions we've had, exploring everything from homeschooling to unschooling to
Mhm.
whatever. And so just trying to figure out the right things to impart to our kids, from a values perspective, kind of from like internal principles,
Mhm.
like grit, fortitude versus just like kind of core academic type skills. That obviously there's a certain base that every human needs to be able to function, but there's a lot of other things that we're just grappling with it, like what's the best way to
Absolutely.
impart these things to our kids. So
Yeah.
last thing on what didn't go well, and then we'll jump into what can we do better, is I just put down mainly for me. I don't know if Julie would say for her, but just personal study of the
Mhm.
Bible. Again, like probably won't be a huge part of the channel, but it's a big part of our life. And so we just want to be transparent. We call that out. Like I'd like to get better with that. With the move, and there's many excuses I guess I could give, but that's important. And um, how much energy and time I spent on it didn't reflect the importance that I put on it inwardly, and I want to change that going forward.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's kind of the first two sections of a retrospective. What went well, celebrate the wins, what can we do better, actually figure out, which of those areas, just be transparent with yourself and your own situation. It didn't go well, but then you kind of focus on looking forward. Those
Mhm.
are looking back, looking forward. So what can we do better? What we're using in our family, again, it's another technique, at least I learned in the sort of product and software industry. It's from Google. It's called OKRs, Objective Key Results. And that's the framework that we use, kind of looking ahead for goals. They're not really New Year's resolutions, although I don't care if you call them that. It's just the framework I think helps us though. So objective is, just think of an objective as like the thing you want to accomplish, and we'll actually show, don't tell ours, so it kind of helps with an illustration. But then key results are the like kind of quantitative demonstrations that you accomplish that objective. And a sort of a helpful hint for key results is like if it doesn't have a number in it, it might not be a key result. And that maybe not all ours have key results or have numbers in them, but it's directionally you want to kind of have that pattern. So
Mhm.
the first one here, so our first objective, and I will say this, objectives can be like, at least how we're treating them, can be like far off into the future, 1 years, 5 years, whatever. But key results, at least in how we're using them, should be focused on a pretty short to medium term time horizon. So our objectives are just kind of forward looking, but our key results are for the first quarter of this next year. So starting tomorrow through January, February, March, that's the time period that we're trying to kind of accomplish these key results.
Mhm.
So our first objective is, no surprise here, we'll become financially independent within 5 years, but this is what I mentioned earlier, while increasing our quality of life along the way. So five, but not sacrificing quality of life along the way. And we'll cover a lot of details about how we're adjusting our view on what a quality life is, but
Mhm.
that's what the objective is right now. Three key results. So we want to maintain our budget, and we'll get into details and kind of how we itemize specific things and what percentage each bucket gets for groceries and transportation. But
Mhm.
again, what gets measured gets managed. It's not super exciting for a budget, but we have one. We want to be really strict about it. And that's basically it. One kind of nuance to that is like we really want to focus on our groceries in the first 90 days of this next year. We've been itemizing or reducing, I should say, other expenses. Like we're going to do a whole series on our cell phone that we just did. We just reduced it by $80 to $90 per month for both of ours. But the next kind of focal point is groceries. It's a big expense item, so that's kind of we'll focus in
Mhm.
2018. Want to increase our net worth by about 13%. And again, percentages are relative, and I think they're more meaningful, because if I gave you a dollar amount that maybe it's high, maybe it's low compared to your situation, for us it's a stretch goal. It's really like each of these key results, and kind of how Google does it, at least, is like every key result should leave you kind of uncomfortable, like I don't know if I can hit it. And that's definitely true for this one. The last one here is qualify for the Southwest Companion Pass. So we just did a recent video on this. This is kind of in the quality of life piece. The other two are related to really hitting financial independence, increasing net worth and those kind of things. But we want to be able to travel as a family. That's part of quality of life for us, but we want to be able to do it affordably. So that's one of the things we want to try to accomplish, in the first quarter of this next year. Maybe you can cover this one. I know you had some notes on the specific key results, but
I don't know if I wrote them down accurately. But yeah, so cultivating a simple yet active lifestyle. So one of those is reducing the amount of times that he has to travel in for work by at least reducing it by one less day. So that would be 2 days a week instead of 3. And I think that would help a lot in terms of overall quality of life for him and us at the house. And then the second one, we're still kind of working on, but right now we've got something that is from the sheepdog course.
Yeah, so
You might
there's
have to explain that one.
yeah, and I can do more details later, but basically, there's a retired now, but MMA fighter, but he's a Green Beret Ranger qualified, Special Forces guy. Tim Kennedy started a kind of civilian, and they do military and law enforcement as well, but it's like a training course. A lot of details about that, but I went to one about a year and a half ago, and they sent some emails, and they sent an email, again, probably about a year ago, about kind of certain benchmarks that they look for in physical fitness, and kind of they gave 4 different exercises, and they gave you kind of a weak, average, and strong thresholds, and kind of so some of the active, the KRs that we're going to try to shoot for is within that kind of measurement framework, and I just call it like the sheepdog strong framework. But what we're looking at right now is kind of event 3 and 4, and events is like, so one of them measures work capacity and the other one measures endurance, and so we're just trying to grapple with like, okay, if it doesn't have a number in it, it's probably not a key result. So how can we measure physical fitness? So right now we're looking at both of those, and like Julie can talk about the specific thing about what it is and kind of where we're trying to get to by the end of Q1 of next year.
So under work capacity, it has a 300-meter shuttle run, which would be 12 200 or 25-meter sprints. And doing that for an average, I think is what we're going to try to shoot for, would be within 65 to 75 seconds. And that might be a stretch goal, or I'm for sure that will be a stretch goal. But even just to try to work up to that, I think would be really helpful. For me, physical fitness is so huge to my overall mental health and happiness. And so just keeping that and maintaining that kind of with a goal in mind is, I think, will be really helpful. And then on the endurance side, it says running for 3 miles in a time of, again, we're going to shoot for the average, 21 minutes to 24 minutes. So might be a stretch goal again, but both doing speed and then long distance, which I think are really great overall ways to not only just stay physically fit, but as a good measurement tool to use. So we're going to shoot for that.
And I didn't mention this earlier, but one of the principles of doing KRs and things like these key results is focus on outcomes, don't focus on outputs.
Yeah.
So the output, so if Julie and I actually accomplished that, 12 times 25 meters shuttle run back and forth in 65 seconds, that's going to require a lot of output versus of training and exercise of 3 times a week, 4 times a week, whatever it may be, to actually hit that outcome. So we focus on the outcome in the key results, but the outputs required is going to be a stretch. And the last one I'll put for me personally, and I've grappled with whether this is a good key result or not, but I feel like I need to lose some weight. And so I'd like to hit 180 pounds in the next 30 days. Which again is a stretch. I think for me, like, weight is a key unlock for a lot of other energy level, and like how well you sleep and move and things like that. So that's a kind of a personal KR, but I'm lumping it in with kind of all the other ones. Okay, final stretch here. We'll do one more objective and key results, and then we'll wrap up this probably really long video. So do you want to take this? We'll both chime in on this one.
Sure. So this one is make learning, exploring, and experimenting part of our normal everyday life. And the first one is bringing Autumn into a level of reading that is basic I mean, she's going to be going into kindergarten, so she's probably going to start learning how to read in kindergarten, but we'd like to start working with her on that now, going into this year. And so by fall, that hopefully she'll have a little bit of a jump start on that. And for Hudson, it'd be identifying his letters and his numbers. Anyway, we go into a lot of details about him, but that's kind of a goal that we'll have for him in terms of just identifying some of the basics in that area.
Yeah. I think, yeah, like we said earlier, kind of with schooling and unschooling, homes, all these
Mm-hmm.
different things, we're grappling with it. Like that's admittedly, but the objective we have is like we want to be, lifelong, lifetime learners. Just that's part of the culture of our family. Reading is one of those kind of key unlocks. And so obviously we have to have certain benchmarks and can always improve. But implicit in these, and maybe we should call it out, is I personally would like them to have an interest, if not a love for it. That doesn't necessarily mean everyone has to be, a bookworm, so to speak, but like it's a gateway. It opens the door into all kinds of worlds, learning how
Mm-hmm.
to read. So those are those KRs. The last one here is obviously we have this YouTube channel. When we wrote these KRs, the goal here was 25 subscribers. Again, by the end of Q1, we're getting close to that now. So obviously, like if you hit a KR within the time period you're doing it, well then just revise your KR and
Mm-hmm.
always improve. So what's that?
Go upward.
Yeah, go upward. Um, so maybe that's it. I mean, we're learning, and I hope give us some feedback if this type of video is helpful to you. It kind of gets into our process again. We're always trying to get better, and so one of the exercises I think that has been helpful over the last couple of years is this retrospective. Again,
Mm-hmm.
um, it took multiple iterations, for Julie and I to like in multiple conversations to get to what we just kind of read to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really start at the beginning of December, like I mentioned earlier, and just kind of think through like what did go well, what
Mm-hmm.
didn't, and then going forward, how can we improve and get better? Always recognizing that you're you're competing against yourself. You're not competing against, keeping up with the Joneses or someone else. It's good to kind of see what other people are doing. Even Julie mentioned this other family and how they're monitoring their expenses and reducing it. That's good as maybe like a mile marker or something like that, but you don't want to use those other people as your GPS. Like use yourself. And but if you don't measure it, then you don't know where you are. You don't know where you were and don't know where you are now. If we didn't measure some of these things, even related to net worth and other things, I would end the year thinking, like I don't know if the year was good or not.
Yeah.
But now you can actually see some things are quantitative, some are a little more subjective. But anyway, it's just kind of this process of measuring things, managing them, looking back, looking forward, in an effort to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Any closing thoughts, or should we just wrap it up here?
It's been a great year. I'm excited about the progress that we made this year, and I think, like we talked about in the beginning, I think the major thing was making that decision, and I think some major reasons that we made that decision is that we're going to live life now, and having these conversations, we have these conversations a lot, and it's good though, because not only is it good for our relationship, but it also puts us on the same page, and we get to talk about what is going well in our life and what's not. And it's not just something that we do at the end of the year. I mean, I feel like Gary and I spend a lot of time, it could be like 5 a.m. coffee chats, or it could be, trying to almost passed out at the end of the day, chats that we kind of have about, what's going on in our lives and what can we change. And we consider a lot of different things. But anyway, overall, this process has been positive for us.
All right. Well, that's a wrap. Here's to 2018.
Cheers.
And we'll see you along the journey.